Okay, thank you everyone. We are back from recess. Maneka, I believe we left off on you. Maybe perhaps just to backtrack a little bit and you can discuss the petition and then move forward with the rest of the testimony.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Speaker Nelson. As I mentioned, we're presenting a hard copy of the online petition on the change.org website belonging to Protege Latex and Save Retidian, which now has over 13,873 signatures online, and will provide you with an updated PDF of all the signatures and comments for your committee report. But we have a hard copy to submit today. So as I was, this petition goes to members of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Updates are sent to all senators in the 35th Guam legislature, as well as to the governor's office, the rear admiral, and various members of Congress. And so, as I was mentioning, we appreciate that the resolution has some of the same language and concerns that have been stated in the petition, including the ongoing Earth Justice lawsuit, which seeks to set aside the 2010 and 2015 records of decision regarding the relocation of Marines from Okinawa to the Marianas Islands, because the Department of Defense found no other alternative to move, and also did not create a single environmental impact statement for various projects it would involve. Of the options considered, building the live fire training range complex at the Northwest Field would be the most destructive option to the environment, the natural and cultural resources, and to the communities surrounding the area. And it was mentioned by Maria a few minutes ago, and I'd just like to reiterate that it was actually the military's document, the supplemental environmental impact statement that noted that Alternative 5, which includes the areas of Tailalo, Arunau, Letexan, Pahan, and Anapsan, would have more adverse impacts than any of the other live fire training range complex alternatives. And some of the impacts that they identified include the freshwater lens impact, critical habitat impact, conservation area impact, rare and unique species impact, ancestral sites impact, family burials impact, ancestral burials impact, land claims impact, visitor enjoyment, private property impact, stray bullets, access restrictions, and noise impacts. That's why we included that in the petition. We also included that the 2010 and 2015 records of decision underestimated or leave out the full impacts of the endangered species within the wildlife refuge. We say that mitigation efforts are not sufficient to protect these endangered species. Avoidance is the only way to protect the endangered species. The live fire training range complex also poses a tremendous risk of contaminating Guam's primary freshwater source, the Northern Lanzo Aquifer. The impact on ancestral and historic sites cannot be mitigated because many of the resources at the site still remain in pristine, undisturbed condition and are still being studied. Furthermore, Latex and Retidian is a sacred site for the Native people and a spiritual connection to their ancestors. And we know that many of our sacred sites are no longer accessible to the public, many of them already locked behind the military fence. And so Latexan is one of the last remaining places that we're able to go and to connect with our history directly. The construction of the live fire training range complex constitutes an environmental injustice to the indigenous people of Guam, the Chamorro people, and further disempowers Native communities through militarization and contamination on Native lands. And so those are the main points of our petition. And as I said, we're providing about 70 pages of comments, as well as over 12,000 signatures within this hard copy, but we'll be submitting the updated petition with nearly 14,000 signatures via email. And so with these numbers, with this information, and now this latest GAO report, we just have so much evidence that continues to prove that the military presence here on Guam is quite destructive on so many levels, not just on Guam in the region, and as it has been in Okinawa and Japan. So this is not an issue of national security in which we have to sacrifice everything for the security of the larger nation. This is an issue of genuine security. Because if we don't have clean water, if we don't have our jungles to help recharge our aquifer, if all of our ancestors are being ripped out from under us, what kind of security is that? People have been describing what's happening what's going to happen at the live fire training range as war games, it feels like with all that we've already lost and all that we have at stake, war is already here. We are already under attack. We already have lost so much, and we have so much at risk. And so we appreciate this. We sincerely appreciate this resolution. Again, we ask that the entire body please vote to pass this resolution. We appreciate Vice Speaker Nelson's sentiment to readdress the approach, but ultimately we do not want to pause. We want a complete halt of the military buildup. We do not want this firing range complex. We do not want the buildup for Guam. Sizos Masi. Thank you very much.
Suzuis Masi, to all those who presented, Monica Flores. I just would like to call up to the table or recognize those that are at the table right now. Jessica Nagauta, Cara Flores, Joni Kerr, Shannon Seguenza, Francesca De Oro, and Tony. Oh, Halan Seneclis. We also have on the list to speak, we have Gavin McManus, if he's here. Who else? Yes. And I think lastly, okay, and lastly we have Bobby Seneclis. Bobby Beneventi, correct. And is there Savina Bell, Christine Bell, Emily Bell, and Victoria Ashley Cepeda Cruz? Okay, so we will start with Jessica. Oh, sorry, Zita.
Good evening again, Senators. I'm speaking, I'm reading this testimony is for Barbara Beneventi. She had to leave, so she's asked me to read it on her behalf. Dear Vice Speaker Nelson and members of the 35th Guam Legislature, my name is Barbara Bobby S.N. Beneventi, a resident of Guahan and retiree from the government of Guam, Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. My husband and I, along with our 3 adult children and their children, choose to remain on Guam to raise our families as our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents have done so. Guam is our home. We respect and value what it means to be Chamorro and to live our lives accordingly, honoring and respecting what we have learned from our ancestors and with the ideals for passing on our cultural beliefs, strengths, practices, and resiliency to the next generations. I submit this written testimony in support of Legislative Resolution Number 164-35 Core, relative to urging the support of Governor Lourdes Leon Guerrero to call for a pause to clearing pre-construction data recovery and construction activities related to the U.S. Department of Navy's proposed live fire training range complex at Northwest Field, or Tailalu, adjacent to Lake Tecton, in order to ensure the protection of the environment and historic and cultural resources of the northern coastline of Guam. What the Department of Navy is hell-bent on proceeding with, the military's continued actions towards building their live fire training range complex, LFTRC, benefits first and foremost the U.S. military, not the resident families whose home is Guahan. Their military buildup and plans for a LFTRC is disrespectful and destructive and dismisses what we expressively value as Chamorro people. For over 60 years, my husband and I have been blessed with lessons learned from our Sina, the art of fishing, farming, and using our island's natural resources to support and sustain our families. We understand that taking good care of our land, air, and ocean is vital to our overall health and well-being. We understand that when we protect our natural resources, our healthy environment reciprocates. It is our inherent responsibility to pass on lessons learned to the next generation, and they too must pay this forward through actions and through our shared experiences, through our trials and tribulations, and through our honest and best efforts to do the right thing for our children and grandchildren. The right thing is to say no to the military buildup, because this action comes with the continued destruction of our land and threats toward our Chamorro heritage. The right thing is to say no to the establishment of the military's planned live fire training range complex at Northwest Field or Tailalu or anywhere else on Guam or this specific region. The right thing is to say no to any actions that will result in stopping access to our island's hunting, fishing, and recreational spots occupied by the U.S. military that we as Chamorro people have a right to. The right thing is to be open to learning some of the following facts, as I have, about all that is at stake, that I believe is not in the interest for all the residents of Guam. The live fire training range complex will consist of 5 units for firing machine guns, assault rifles, pistols, and non-standard small arms. Artillery will be fired at the LFTRC up to 273 days, 39 weeks out of the year, on weekdays and some weekends during the day and night. Almost 7 million rounds of ammunition are estimated to be fired each year. On Guam and elsewhere, the U.S. military has a long-standing history of contaminating sites, burying canisters of mustard gas, leaving behind unexploded ordnance. LFTRC at Northwest Field and other activities associated with the relocation of the Marines to Guam will adversely impact the northern Guam Lens Aquifer, our main source of drinking water. According to the SEIS records of decision, we will experience a long-term increase in annual groundwater production, withdrawal of 1.7 million gallons per day, an increase in the rate of sewage spills impacting groundwater quality with potential exposure to additional raw sewage, and an increased withdrawal from the NGLA that may result in higher level of chloride concentrations. There are over 80 contaminated military dump sites on Guam, most of which have not been cleaned up, and Guam has been exposed to radiation and nuclear contamination from nuclear testing in the region and from nuclear submarines that have leaked radiation to our waters. 19 years ago, Difunto Agnes Santos wrote in a card sent to me, "The future of the next generation depends on what we do today." How true that was in 2000 and still in 2019, or 2019. Over the years, my family and I attended several public hearings and meetings posted by our elected leaders as well as by the military. We listened, observed, and engaged in conversation about proposals that will impact on families like ours. We didn't represent any organizations. We represented ourselves, although we believe other individuals and families share the same sentiments of concern. My husband has been fishing Guam's water for over 40 years, and the fish and other seafood he catches feeds our children and grandchildren and is shared with our extended family members, neighbors, and friends. The proposed LFTRC surface danger zone threatens to put a complete stop to his and other fishermen's rights to fish around Haputo, Letexan, Taragi, and Patty Point. The planned LFTRC is a threat to the ocean and ocean life. Once again, we believe that we have the inherent right to fish the water surrounding Guam and to expect that our freshwater resources are protected from contamination. We have the right to access and utilize our natural resources, to provide for our families and support reciprocally our community members, as is our cultural practice. Thank you, Senators, once again and again and again for facilitating these opportunities to voice our concerns. Respectfully, Barbara Bobby S. and Beneventi.
Hafidez and buenas. Guahusi Jessica Nengauta Tauta Malasudzo. I am a mother, daughter, Lanchera of Guahan, and I'm here today representing my family and those that have come before me. I'm here to testify in support of Resolution 164-35. However, I want to make clear that my support and desire is for a total stop to the current military buildup and transfer of Marines from Okinawa to Guam and the Mariana Islands. I agree with many of the speakers that came before, but I will speak on my life purpose at the moment. As a caretaker of this land we call home, I am deeply concerned about the effects this proposed firing range might have on our natural resources. As a farmer, I care about what I put into the ground and how I grow and water fresh foods and medicine. It is my daily intention to add fertility to the land that I farm on and to be mindful of those who walk the path before me and for the next generation. I truly feel that true security for our home aims only at safeguarding our natural resources, our land, water, air, and sea. These are the resources that have sustained us for generations. As a mother, I've often wondered what the future of Guahan holds for our children. I teach them by example, showing them that I work hard to provide for them and by growing food for our community and medicine to heal the sick, because I believe and have faith in our island to provide for us as it has for generations. I see over 1,000 Famagu'an visit the farm every year, literally planting seeds with them to connect them of how important it is to have clean water and conscious farms. And these are essential for reviving both our health and spirit. So I wonder, what are we showing our children of Guahan by accepting war and violence upon our shores? Does it teach sustainability? Who are we protecting by accepting this firing range? What are we doing to ensure our home is safe and clean for our children? And how much of ourselves are we sacrificing for the war machine? Are we perpetuating peace? Does it teach stewardship? This firing range puts many of our resources at risk. Our aquifer, as everyone spoke before, is as a greater risk of being contaminated by the ongoing and proposed bulldozing of thousands of acres of land and plants that help to filter water. The military is proposing to drill 11 more water wells to support the increase of Marines' independence. So it does not make sense to me to place a firing range again over an aquifer that supplies water to over 80% of our island. We see it in the news all the time. Firing ranges around the world are known to leak heavy toxic materials in the soil and water. Yes, we welcome visitors on our shores. We're giving people who share what we have with our visitors, but at what expense? The proposed firing range shows a total lack of respect for our natural environment, our culture, and thank you for you guys standing up today on this issue. I believe we should think about Tautau Guahan's security first. There's already an unsafe level of contamination, World War II barrels, equipment and destruction caused by the militarization of our lands since long ago. No amount of beach cleanups or photo ops will make up for those things. I've attached a map in my testimony as a research that has been done of over 100 toxic sites. It's really an ugly map, and it really makes me feel sick to think about. But I would like us to demand cleanup before risking any more harm to our environment and natural resources with this proposed firing range. Again, no amount of money can replace or replicate what we have. Please continue to put a stop to this type of destruction. And for the record, I do not support the proposed training range in Guahan, and I stand in solidarity with our sister islands in the Northern Mariana Islands, who also do not support the training ranges in Tinian and Pagan. Sainamasi.
Thank you, Senators, for this resolution and for listening to the community. My name is Cara Flores, and I am in support of the proposed resolution 164-35. I speak in my capacity as a member of this community, as a mother, as well as the director of Duk Duk Goose Inc., a local nonprofit and Guam's only culture-based production company. And on behalf of the incredibly talented people who work there, as well as all of the children and families that we serve. Our organization seeks to affirm identity and to empower our community's children and families as future caretakers of our culture and heritage. In all of our media programs and outreach, our message is very clear, that who we are and what we have is valuable and worth protecting. We encourage children and their families to reconnect to culture through the natural environment and to reclaim their place as caretakers of our land and ocean. We would be hypocrites if we continued to do this work for Guam's children, but did not speak against the massive destruction of thousands of acres of limestone forest, of cultural sites, of endangered species. We are sending conflicting messages to our children if we're asking them to protect our land and ocean and to respect our cultural and historical sites while allowing such massive destruction to take place under our watch. I'm going to skip over some of this because it's been said earlier, but I did want to note that in addition to the destruction of our environment, the SEIS stated that the poor will get poorer, costs of goods and services will rise, homelessness will increase, among other things. And these are things that affect the children and the families that we serve, the most at risk in our community. And I don't believe that we're prepared to protect them from the impacts of poverty and increased poverty. Further, in a community that suffers from various cancers at some of the highest rates in the country, and especially in the villages around the bases, which is consistent with what newer studies are finding, the rates of cancer spike around military bases. 6.7 million bullets to be fired every year over our aquifer. Why would anyone be eager to move forward so quickly? Over the years, I've watched various politicians and business owners criticize activists and advocates for being too emotional without having ever read the EIS, SEIS, MITT, ROD, or programmatic agreement, or having spent any time in the jungle. And then their companies and friends grab million-dollar contracts. Our community is not fully aware of the impact that the buildup will have on this island or the threats that it poses to our children and our children's children. What is happening at the site discussed in the resolution is really just a small example of what is happening across the Marianas. The military has separated these projects as if they are separate from one another, but in fact, we are a part of the largest training range or area in the entire world, an area that spans almost 1 million nautical square miles. And the disadvantage of having no EIS that addresses it as a whole is that we don't know how all of the training activities impact the health of our region. This process has been designed to hide information and to make it inaccessible to the average person. It has been demonstrated in the past that we can't necessarily trust what the military tells us, nor that they will follow federal law. Poggett is an example of this. The Poggett lawsuit was filed on the basis that the DoD did not follow NEPA law in their selection of Poggett Village, and it is naive to believe that it will be any different moving forward. To close my testimony, I'd like to read an email uncovered during the Poggett lawsuit. It's a short email, and I want to read it just sort of as a reminder of the reasons why we need to be really careful when we use the military as a resource to give us the correct information. This email was sent on Monday, September 27, 2010, from David Bice, who at the time was, Executive Director of the Joint Guam Program Office. As discussed with Ms. P last week, believe a successful Route 15 acquisition strategy will require elimination all impacts to Pauget Historic Village in the near term, and finding mutual accommodations with racetrack until expiration of land use license. Bookend COA, I don't know what that means. We can get all of the land eventually, including an SDZ over Pauget, surface danger zone. We have to be patient and build trust with the community first. Groups opposing marine relocation are successfully seizing on Pauget as a means to gain legitimacy with the public. Need to take the issue off the table to isolate them. Sweeteners will be needed to garner GovGuam legislature support to remove firing range restrictions on Route 15 properties and to obtain legislature approval of Chamorro Land Trust lease of properties below the cliff line. Some members of the legislature will attempt to block all land acquisition until other issues with federal government are resolved. Need to give legislature a deal they can't refuse. Thanks. B. I'm sorry that I'm done. Thank you.
We were stunned. Thank you for reminding us of that. I haven't heard that in years. Thank you.
Afade, good evening, senators. Thank you all, again for bringing forth this resolution. My name is Joni King-Akur. I teach chemistry and marine biology courses at Guam Community College. I'm also a faculty advisor for the GCC Eco Warriors. It is a student and community-based organization dedicated to protecting the environment. Our motto is Learn, Lead, Protect. And over the past 8 years, we've been involved in cleanups, raising awareness of climate change via our March to Protect Mother Earth. We support recycling efforts at the Liberation Day Parade and Carnival. We protested sending runoff into Tumon Bay via the controversial Fujita Culvert. And we support responsible development with Safe Southern Guam Incorporated. The Eco Warriors support Resolution 164-35, calling for a pause. And I think now after hearing everybody, I want to say a halt. I've used the word pause because that was the original word, but I'm feeling that I should change my language and call for a halt for the following reasons. The resolution refers to the last mature seed-producing Cereanthes nelsonii on Guam. It is one of only 40 to 50 individuals left in the entire world. This tree is protected by the Endangered Species Act of 1973 and was declared endangered in 1987. During this past week, after the meeting with the governor, Guam residents on talk radio, a certain talk radio show, have questioned the practicality of protecting this tree. Their sentiment is it's only a tree, there are plenty of other trees around. So I want to ask them for a minute to imagine that we are talking about the last 50 fanihi, the last 50 green sea turtles, or the last 50 cocoa birds, and maybe they might change their minds. So losing a species is forever, and risking the loss of one mature individual and its seedlings brings us closer to that end. As such, the Hudson lagu is not the only endangered species found in the area slated for the firing range. Others include the fanihi, the Mariana's eight-spot butterfly, the cycad or fadang, and our Ufa halamtano. So these endangered species should have been afforded protection by the Endangered Species Act, which requires federal agencies in consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and/or NOAA Fisheries Service to ensure that actions they authorize, fund, or carry out are not likely to jeopardize the continued existence of any listed species or result in the destruction or adverse modification of designated critical habitat of such species. The law also prohibits any action that causes a taking of any listed species of endangered fish or wildlife. So it kind of boggles the mind that there's this law that was meant to protect our endangered species and that the military is able to circumvent it. And they would use the word mitigation, but I would rather use the word circumvent. And in order to do this, an agreement was struck for the military to create a limestone forest out of a secondary, previously cleared, low-quality forested area. For every high-quality limestone forest acre destroyed, an acre of forest enhancement would be created. Biologists hired to complete this project are challenged with replacing high-quality primary forests that took millions of years of geological and biological processes to create. Another challenge facing these biologists is transplanting host plants of the 8-spot butterfly. So they hope that the adult butterflies will seek and find the transplanted host plants to complete their life cycles. So this is based on some research, but it's incomplete because the 8-spot butterfly has never been studied like this before. So it's all going to be an experiment in progress. Number 2, second reason, the military has a terribly shoddy record with respect to protecting the environment in and around its bases and firing ranges. White papers document heavy contamination in the US and in foreign countries such as Germany. Indeed, some of these areas have been shut down because they were deemed too toxic for soldiers to train. The third reason, there remain at Andersen Air Force Base Superfund sites that have not been cleaned up. Indeed, it is likely that nothing can ever be done due to something, they use the phrase, technical impracticability. This means that basically any attempt to clean up the solvent, and the solvent in question is trichloroethylene, or TCE, because this will cause salt water to intrude into the freshwater lens. This is because the way that TCE has traveled, it's denser than water, so it's passing through the aquifer, it's passed through the freshwater lens, it's collected between the freshwater lens and the saltwater layer. So they don't want to extract it because they're afraid that they're going to do more damage by pulling up the saltwater into the freshwater layer. Okay. So what this means is that the TCE there is going to be there for forever. So there's no cleaning up the sites ever where this groundwater has been contaminated. It was really easy to find that. You know, I mean, it's on the EPA, US EPA Superfund site. All you have to do is search for Andersen Air Force Base, Jigo, Guam. So if the military wants to be trusted with taking environmental precautions to avoid repeating mistakes of the past, then they must consent to being held up to scrutiny by the local government and community. Sainama Asi.
Good evening, everybody. Guahusi Shannon Seguenza. I am an educator, a community member. This process is really stressful and disheartening, but I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who's still here and to share my love and ask that you guys just look at each other and smile and share appreciation. It's really hard to sit here for a long time and hear all of the hard facts about what we face. But it's a beautiful thing that despite all the hours that we've just spent here, we're still here, and that we stand by something and stand with something very powerful, and that's love for our island and each other. I'm here in support of Resolution 164-35. Thank you, Senator Nelson, Speaker Nelson, and the 12 senators who co-sponsored this resolution. Department of Defense has spent well over a decade trying to convince the people of the Mariana Islands that the buildup is good for us. that we need this firing range and that they're doing their best to mitigate any damage. Money and protection is the promise that is offered in return for what they claim is not negotiable. But we know that there is nothing to be gained against the great losses that we face. We don't trust their protection. It is a promise that means that we'll be left as middle pegs in wars that we have nothing to do with. We have not forgotten how our great-grandparents, our grandparents, and our parents were left here to fend for themselves against enemies that were never ours or our ancestors. Our ancestors are not a history that are far away from us. They are not left in the past. Our ancestors are not a drawing by foreigners or a diary written by Spanish missionaries or by an American Marine. Our ancestors are part of our story. They are around us, they are inside us, they're in the ground, in the air, and in the water. They're in the healing plants and trees at Litekzan. Our ancestors are not entities of the past, but the energies that drive our fight in the protection of our land and our children. How many times do we have to say no? How many ways do we have to say no? Through protest, through public forum, through thousands upon thousands upon thousands of written testimonies, we say no, we scream in the language that they force us to speak. If the United States of America is truly a just nation, our pleas for preservation and peace will be heard. If the Department of Defense truly wishes to minimize the damage to our cultural heritage, our pleas for a stop will be listened to. But I do not have faith that this is so. Our wishes and hopes will not come to a tangible reality without an aggressive fight from our people. On the front lines are our elders, our healers, our teachers, our farmers, our cultural practitioners, every man, woman, and child that knows our obligations as inheritors of our islands. But we acknowledge also that the people and entities that we are up against only see suits, ties, and titles. I see these 13 policymakers here doing what it is you promised. You are being our voices. You are the people they will listen to. You have the suits, you have the ties, and the title. Oh, that's my phone. I apologize. I'm not even gonna pretend. Hold on one moment while I dig it out of my bag. Can we scratch that from the record? Is this a possibility? I apologize deeply. My apologies. Where was I? Okay, maybe that was just the universe's way of telling me to just calm down a little bit. Okay, where were we? Front lines, okay. We're gonna start from the top of this paragraph. Oh, my apologies, my face is red, I'm so sorry. Okay, on the front lines are our elders, our healers, our farmers, our cultural practitioners, every man, woman, and child that knows our obligations as inheritors of our islands. But we acknowledge that the people and entities that we are up against only see suits. Oh, I read that already. Wait, hold on. I'm skipping. Hold on. I apologize. Okay. You have the suits, you have the ties, and the titles we gave you to carry out our resounding message of no. No to the destruction of what is sacred to us. Now we look to our Magahaga, Governor Lulian Guerrero, as is spoken in the resolution. A title given by these people. Her title is given because we trusted and believed that our messages would be carried to this entity that has inflicted too many wounds upon our people. Governor Lulian Guerrero claimed support of the buildup. But as our Magahaga, it is your obligation to put away your personal interests and carry this message for your people. No to the firing range at Northwest Field. No to the closing of Litekzan as a surface danger zone. And no to any more destruction of our environmental and cultural resources. Sana Maasi.
Buenas and Hafide. Guahusi Francesca Dioro. First, I would like to thank you all for being here. It's been a long couple hours, so I really commend the fact that you're all still present and that you came at all. All right. My testimony is in support of this resolution as an effort to pause construction of the military's live firing range. I'm also here in support of a full stop to the military buildup. I am a daughter of Guahan, a daughter of Vera Santos, Arthur Dioro, the granddaughter of Isabel Santos, the granddaughter of Juanita Calvo Dioro, who was a Surahana, and the granddaughter of Francisco Rivera Santos, who was a senator. He served here for 22 years, and he passed away right before I was born. But I brought his legacy as a kind-hearted leader of our community and as an advocate for the protection of Chamorro lands by Chamorro families here today with me. Sorry. My tata fought for the return of Latexan to its rightful owners before it was handed over to the federal government in the 90s, and I know he will be proud of me for being here today to do the same thing. He knew better than to trust anyone but our own people with our cultural heritage and resources, like our land and water. He believed in our ability to govern ourselves and make decisions for the betterment of our people and for the future of our island. He wrote in Hoffa magazine in the 90s that our people deserve self-determination, just like the US obtained for itself. He was not afraid to stand up for all of this in the media, in the legislature. He even stood on top of desks in Washington, D.C. to get his point across. It's my job today to continue his legacy of love for our island and people, and without fear or pause. I am here today to stand up for my generation, which I call the generation of loss. Some of you may even be our parents. We grew up not hearing the sound of our language coming from our hearts, but recited. We grew up not hearing the sound of birds in the jungle, but in recordings. We grew up not knowing or valuing ourselves. We now have to learn all of it on our own, and it hurts. I had to go to Tinian to hear birds for the first time at 21, and it broke my heart. I had to be shamed for not knowing my language before I took the initiative to learn it myself. I had to leave Guahan to realize how special, unique, and beautiful it really is. I refuse to let my children learn how valuable our island, culture, language, animals, jungles, and resources are the hard way. I don't want them to have to fight for their land or water because my generation and yours took it for granted, or worse, because we were too afraid to do what it took to protect it. I don't want to watch more of what we have disappear in my lifetime because we were too distracted chasing something ephemeral like money. We cannot continue to sacrifice all that sustains us and makes life beautiful here for the whims of outsiders, or for a misguided desire to be more like them. We have nothing to fear and everything to lose. I came here today to remind you that loss isn't the only language we know. There's a deeper language of hope, resilience, strength, and perseverance that lives in our hearts. I implore you to let this language move you as you work to halt this buildup in its entirety and to remind our Magahaga that it also lives in her. We have all of our ancestors standing behind us and all of our children and their children's children standing before us. It's our responsibility to do what is necessary and right by them. We have to work from love, not fear. Remember our ancestors and act for our descendants. Sanamasi.
Buenas and half a day. Guahusi Hilaan San Nicolas. I want to thank you, senators, for having us here and giving us the opportunity to voice our opinions. I am the son of Colt San Nicolas and Janice Furukawa. My father was a former Chamorro Nation activist, and my mom was a journalist for the PDN who used to cover activist stories. And they raised me to be very much involved in the movement to preserve and protect what little we have left. I'm here tonight to testify in support of Resolution 164-35. I'm a humble son of the Marianas, and I'm here on behalf of my ancestors and my descendants. It's been 75 years now since the Chamorro people were relinquished from the Japanese occupation of Guam. Some of our parents, grand and great-grandparents witnessed and endured unspeakable atrocities during this time, so naturally they were grateful for the aid of the US. Anyone would be. But for 75 years after that, countless Chamorro and Guamanian mothers and fathers have sent their sons and daughters off to join the military, and of course possibly off to war for the US. Perhaps this was to fulfill the inherent tendency of islanders to practice reciprocity and give back to the nation that helped us regain our sense of freedom, because we're not truly free. But I say that our people have given enough and that the debt has been repaid, at least double. We have sacrificed land, water, culture, our language, our very identities as islanders, and our lives to prove that we are grateful. But the very establishment that is supposedly dedicated to keeping us safe is now jeopardizing that safety with their firing range. There will be millions of rounds fired annually, none of which I think would ever be picked up. And I say that because I just found a World War II grenade in my backyard like a week ago. How much lead is that will be deposited into the soil? How much of that lead will seep into our aquifers? Will we be able to brush our teeth or shower our children in our homes? How long before we get lead poisoning? How much carbon will the firing range emit annually? Will it affect Guahan's air quality? Even if it doesn't, the relocation of 4,000 or so Marines and their vehicles probably will. Do we have the infrastructure to support that many more people? How will we manage water use if our water is contaminated and there's 4,000 more people and their dependents who need it as well? Where will we get our drinking water from? Are we going to keep relying on the Jones Act to ship bottled water here for almost twice what it should cost? There is no such thing as national security when our nation is dying of thirst, dying of lead poisoning and cancer. Oh, wait, we're not even officially part of the US nation, so I guess that means we deserve it, right? This is what we're faced with after having the highest military enlistment rate per capita out of all the states and territories. This is how the military thanks Chamorros and Guamanians for their service. This is what it costs to feel secure in our own home without actually being secure. I oppose the firing range and I support its complete halt because I am Chamorro and I want to protect what little pristine land we have left. I want to protect the animals, the fruits, vegetables, medicine, the water, the cultural and historical significance of the land because we owe our lives to the land. We as Native people understand that we belong to the land and not the other way around. Every fiber of my being was woven by the hands of countless generations in this land. Our ancestors would turn over in their graves if they knew we weren't doing everything in our power to protect it. In fact, they will literally be turned over in their graves if we allow the military to bulldoze any more laddie sites. What we allow in the present is what our children will see as acceptable in the future. They will grow up not knowing or valuing themselves or the land they come from. They will not realize the sacredness of the land if all they see is it being blown up and used for war games. They will have no true sense of belonging. And I've already experienced it myself firsthand. Young Chamorros, I've heard say that their language is dead, which is not true. And I only have my parents to thank for that. And I've heard them also say that they need to leave this rock because there's no opportunities for them here, in their own home. And that's because the naval government systematically oppressed Chamorro language in the schools in my grandparents' generation, and because the military using the children's land for war games. How hard can it be to point and shoot a gun anyway? It was invented because it's already easier to use than a sword. I want to close my testimony with this. Chief Matapang killed San Vitores for pouring water over his daughter's head without his consent. The military is threatening to poison our water and kill possibly all of our children. Can you imagine? Oh, sorry. Chief Matapang killed San Vitores and started a near 30-year-long war with the Spanish crown, which was an imperial superpower in the world at that time. What do you think he would have done if someone killed his language, killed his culture, stole his land, and poisoned his water? That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to give testimony? No? I would like to give each senator an opportunity to perhaps ask the panel any questions or make a couple remarks, if you'd like to, and then I'll close. Senator Taitigui, we'll just work on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I thank you guys for sticking it out this late hour and being here this evening. I greatly appreciate it because without you, we can't really move. We need the support of you to be here too as well. Thank you.
Sajus Masi, Madam Chair, and I just want to say Sajus Masi to everyone who was here tonight, who stayed for the very long hearing and for all of the input that you gave this evening. I am especially grateful for the reminders of our history, of the fight that we've been fighting for a long time, what our ancestors went through, and how we look at this as a multi-generational issue that we are still facing today. So I really appreciate everything that you've brought here today, from the young to the old who spoke, and I am so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you also to everyone. Honestly, all the testimony, it's all unique. It's all very heartfelt. I appreciate that. You inspire us, and we need inspiration. And I'm hoping it inspires our colleagues, and it inspires all of the people of Guam to really unite. I think we've been through a lot, right, over the past 10 years in this kind of process. A lot of attempts to disunite us too, and they've really been intense. And so, there's so many ironic moments, or it's going to be our history's ironic, really. So all of this is just ironic. We're no one's fighting over whether we need to sue somebody for contaminating us with PFAS. We all agree that we should do that, but we're fighting over, should we do that without a public hearing, or should we do that with a public hearing, right? And this is like, I don't think anybody really disagrees that we should protect our cultural sites, but, or our waterlands, but they're going to divide us by, picking things off. And so I really appreciate, Kara, you bringing that letter back in here and reminding us of, there's a strategy. And we are just local folks trying to raise our families, trying to do what we can to let them have a future and know their identity. This is a very unique place, unique, in all these ways. I feel it was pointed out tonight, we're pointing out how unique this place at Tailalu is, environmentally and historically, yet all of that is pales in comparison, no matter how beautiful it is, it pales in comparison when we hear from the landowners that really this is all on their backs, right? And we hear from Marsaina how we are all here on their backs, you know, and even being able to speak today, I just feel like a lot of it, I get inspired from what has happened in the past. And I'm so very grateful for what they have done, and I just feel like it's worth everything I have to just do whatever I can do. And I'm not the eloquent speakers of the past. We've had so many beautiful ones, like your grandfather, Angel Santos, Ben Pangilinan. Even before them, we have books full of when they came to take land away from the Chamorros. At first they said, you know, oh, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice because you're gonna help us. But they started to see that the land was being taken, not necessarily for helping them, but it was being taken in many occasions for recreational areas. And they would stand up and they would speak. And of course, you know, I'm sure they were threatened with their livelihoods, with their health care systems, with everything that we can be threatened with. But I just still say, you inspire me, all of you, all of those who are listening, who were here earlier today. The fact that you can sit here for hours, I don't know how many, you know, times we've tried to do this, hours long. It's very painful, but from the bottom of my heart, Sidzuas Masi. Thank you.
Hafide, mirroring some of that, I also think it's so important to have heard all of you, each of your testimony, you know, listening to the testimonies from beginning to end. Each one of them was so meaningful. Each one of them brought so many things to light. And I truly hope that there are people listening in who are going to have learned something or themselves been inspired by this. There are so many things that are long roads and worth fighting for. And one of the things as a historian I try to do from time to time is just remind myself that when the road seems really long and it seems like it's not going where we'd like it to, but there are so many movements that have been ahead of us that show us that we get there eventually, that there will be change, there can be change, we can make a difference. And I don't think any of us know how to do anything other than to fight for what's right, because we just can't imagine not. But I really hope that we'll get to see some real change in our lifetime for ourselves, but also all of those who are coming after us, our children, our grandchildren, and more. So thank you all for fighting for everyone and all those to come.
I just want to thank everyone here for their outpouring of support. And I know that, like Senator, my colleagues have said, this is a long road. But I think what keeps us going is the hope and the love. Because I think what we love is what's worth saving. And I know our community, we're dealing with a lot of struggles, personal struggles, environmental contamination struggles. And I think as an Indigenous person, we have to embrace all of these things. And I believe we can come out ahead as long as we stand together as a community. And I feel that we can overcome a lot of these struggles. So I have faith in this, and I trust, and I appreciate everyone here today. And you've spoken so beautifully. And I think this is what's going to keep us going. Sidzuas Masi.
Okay, it won't be long. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out here today, to sitting through this process, to give testimony to a lot of the realities that we face today. The reality is that we're facing a Goliath. The reality is, for many, many years, our grandparents, our parents have fought to protect our island, to protect our culture and the natural resources, and they have not been heard. They have essentially gave their lives like your grandfather. And so really today is no matter how tiring it gets, you know, and I want to thank all of you that have been there from the beginning, you know, since 2008, 2009. You pushed me to understand this issue back then, especially my cousin, constantly educating me on the issues and what was at stake here. And I want to thank her as well for being that inspiration for me to understanding the importance of this valuable land that we were raised on. And my commitment to you is to continue to fight, to continue to give my life, to protect our island, to protect our natural resources. And I don't think anything else really needs to be said in that retrospect, because there's no going back now. We have to find a way. We have to find a way forward, like Senator Perez said. So thank you, all of you. Thank you to the people that are watching. This committee has publicly heard this resolution number 164-35. Have a good night. God bless.